Big Sonic, I got a super duper important question to ask you, Big Sonic. Big Sonic, I got a super duper important question to ask you. Alright, what is it now, Small Sonic? What do you want to ask me in this moment of time? Big Sonic, there's like in a very ancient book, and it talks about like rules sent by God, and if I follow those rules, would I be a better person? Surely you will be a better person, Small Sonic, if you follow those rules, because they're clearly from God, so they must be divinely inspired and profound. But Big Sonic, these rules tell me to hurt people that aren't like me. Is that very good? Maybe these rules might be, quite gruesome then. What are these rules about? Big Sonic, I said that if an ant comes near my foot, I should crush it as hard as I possibly can, so that the ant knows who's the boss. Oh, are you sure you're talking to God, or are you talking to some sort of demon up there in the sky that's trying to manipulate you? Big Sonic, these rules were in the book of an ancient, prophet that lived once upon a time and was talking to... I'm going to be starting a brand new series called Religion Talks, and in this series, I'm going to be talking about, religion, just the nature of religion, and the philosophy of religion, and the theology and the nitty-gritty behind a lot of the world's religions. And right off the bat with this episode I'm going to start with is going to be about Christianity, and does the Bible support genocide? And if you read through the Old Testament, certainly, and again, this is a new series I'm starting called Religion Talks, and I'm just going to be talking about a bunch of different religions, the world religions, the theology and the philosophy behind the different world religions, whether certain religions are up to scratch, and if they're not up to scratch. And I'm just going to be diving into, first of all, the Bible and Christianity, because Christianity is I think it's at least one of the largest religions. Maybe it might be smaller than Islam, maybe not, I don't know, but it's up there. It's one of the top dog religions of the world, Christianity. And the issue that I have with Christianity is if you carefully look at the Old Testament, the Bible, you would come across so many mentions of genocide, bloodshed. And does the Bible support genocide? That is the topic of this video. And if you look at the Old Testament, there's certain passages in Leviticus, in some of the laws of Moses, that talk about the fact that if someone doesn't comply to the commandments, the 10 or more commandments, they will suffer some sort of consequence. And if you look at the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, and if you look at some of the injunctions and the commandments that were given to Moses, regarding people that don't fit into his nice category and criteria, those people can be punished by death, even in some cases, especially regarding people that might be on the LGBTQ side of things. Because if you look at the Old Testament, I think the Bible, it does endorse how would I put this? The Bible endorses the fact that people that are GAY, they will be... Big Sonic, there's this book, and it talks about all sorts of things about rules and regulations, and it talks about how I should people that don't fit into it, they should be moved away or enslaved. Is that a very nice, righteous book? Well, Small Sonic, that type of book seems like it's going to promote bigotry and hatred towards people for no legitimate reasons. Big Sonic, this book talks a lot about different people, and how if they're too different, you should unalive them and do all sorts of obscene things. Small Sonic, that sounds it's very ridiculous indeed, that if such a book probably isn't sent from any sort of benevolent deity. It's probably sent by some sort of demonic force trying to manipulate our psyche. Big Sonic, this book talks a lot about how we should live, what should we do to people that aren't like us, and blah blah blah. Are you sure that book wasn't written by some crazy fanatic cult leader that's trying to take your money away? Because that sounds quite obscenely insane indeed. Deedle-deed. Be punished by being stoned to death, and that is quite... I think it is mentioned quite boldly in the Old Testament. Does the Bible support genocide? And if you look at the Old Testament, in the Bible, the Old Testament God, Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, Yahweh, Adonai, Hashem, the Old Testament God kills quite a lot of people. I think if you look at the story of Noah's flood, floods the entire world, and then the entire world just kind of empties out and millions of people and other sorts of living creatures die, God also tells the Israelites in 1 Samuel 15:3 to genocide the Amalekites and their children. God even kills babies and children himself with, like, in the story of, like, you know, like with the Egyptians and like their newborn infants being like kind of like killed because, you know, Moses and blah blah. I don't want to get too deep into the details because a lot of you should be familiar with a lot of these like biblical tales and stories. But if you look at the Bible, does the Bible support genocide? And I think so, that the Bible does. It can be interpreted in a very, very extreme way, because we typically, regarding like extremism, people always look at Islam. Islam is violent. Islam this and Islam that. But if you look at the Old Testament and the laws of Moses, there are like very graphically obscene, like very horrific, like penalties for like breaking these sorts of like covenants with God, certainly regarding people that might be LGBTQ, people that might be doing other sorts of like things that are considered abominations through the lens of like the laws of Moses. Bro, like the Old Testament is just littered with like genocides. And does the Bible support genocide? Because, you know, a lot of Christians, if you tell them about the laws of Moses, like the 10 Commandments, the fact that, bro, it literally boldly states that people that are like queer, they have to be unalived because it is an abomination. Big Sonic. I wanted to talk about, now, again, this book, it says a bunch of things about how I should live my life and what I should do with my life, and if I should be doing this or if I should be doing that. And what do you think about this, Big Sonic? Small Sonic, that book might be quite insane indeed. That book could be like from some sort of demonic being, but Big Sonic, it just says that if people don't fit into its rule books, they should be unalive. Big Sonic, isn't this book by some sort of benevolent deity and God? Small Sonic, you might be in contact with a demonic force that's trying to manipulate you to spread its own hateful ideology beyond your mere mortal vision. But Big Sonic, this book says a lot of like things that are regarding like my life, and goddamn, Big Sonic, I think that this book means more than it does. Small Sonic, if this book is clearly saying a bunch of nonsense. Oh, damn. Like what they're doing is abominable, so they should be put to death. And if you look at the laws of Moses, that's what it clearly indicates and states. But most Christians, they will tell you that, bro, who cares about the Old Testament? We got the Gospels, that's more important. And Jesus says, love your enemies and blah, blah, blah. Bro, but Jesus was studying like the Tanakh. He was reading the Old Testament and he was like holding it near and dear to his heart. He was like being taught different things by the rabbis. Bro, he is a part of that enterprise of like the Old Testament, the laws of Moses. Bro, he is a part of that shit, bro. He's not someone that came and said, oh no, the Old Testament's all bullshit, just follow me, I'm making a new... Bro, a lot of Christians, they kind of naively separate the Gospels away from the Old Testament, bro, because a lot of Christians will say, oh, Jesus was reading the Tanakh, he was studying it, he was sticking to it his whole life. He wasn't here to say that the Old Testament is all bullshit and I'm making a new religion and you got to look at the Gospels and that's what's now valid. Bro, people that, like, a lot of Christians, they're so naive. If you look at the Old Testament, the laws of Moses, bro, they're very, very gruesome. And I do think that the Bible does support genocide. It can be interpreted in that type of way because the Bible has like these very bold like laws and like injunctions and commandments regarding like apostasy. People that don't fit into the rule books of the Bible, they should be stoned to death. And that's, bro, the ancient Israelites, how they were behaving, it wasn't so different than what is ISIS today, bro. Like the ancient Israelites, they were doing all sorts of like things that were deemed, that we would consider as being like probably extremism today, like terrorism and like unaliving people just because they're a little bit different and they don't fit into the rule books of these like of this religion of Christianity, bro. Does the Bible support genocide? I am of the very strong opinion that the Bible can very easily be used as a means to genocide people that are like a bit too different from it, people that might not fit into it, people that might be a little bit too different from the Big Sonic, but this book, it was sent by God. Surely it must mean something, but which God are you talking about, Small Sonic? So many people have their own interpretations in books that they say was sent by God. Big Sonic, this book has a bunch of things, statements, injunctions, commands about treating people that aren't like you with like disdain and torturing them. And Bro, that book sounds like it might be from some demonic force that's trying to manipulate you, Small Sonic. Are you sure it's something that was like divinely inspired by a benevolent god, or if it's like something from a malevolent force that's trying to take away your freedoms and willpower and etc. But Big Sonic, what do you mean, Big Sonic? Small Sonic, this book might be like the work of some sort of like demonic force and being. I don't... Big Sonic, what the fuck are you talking about? Small Sonic, like you're like, this book might be fucking from someone that might be trying to take your soul away. That might be Bible. And in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Yahweh, Jehovah, the God of Abraham, kills quite a lot of people. There's like very obscene, horrific, like brutal, like accounts of like God just unaliving people just for the sake of it, bro. Like just sending bears to Malta to have small children. There's so many like parts of the Old Testament that are just so abominable. And most Christians, if you outline all of this to them, they'll quickly tell you that, bro, yeah, it doesn't matter, bro, because we got the Gospels and that's more important. Bro, Jesus was looking at the Old Testament. He was studying the Tanakh. He wasn't here to start a new religion. Jesus was a Jewish person, and he was reading the Tanakh and going to like synagogues and blah blah blah. Bro, he was like all about the Old Testament and the laws of Moses. He even said that he didn't come to do away with the Old Testament, but to fulfill it and to like answer its prophecies. And bro, so he is a part of that enterprise, and that's what he was like all about. His whole life was about like trying to revive like the Old Testament and the traditional ways of the Israelites. I think so, not to abolish those traditions, but to like kind of revive them. But again, does the Bible support genocide? Because if you look at the Old Testament, a lot of like the commandments and the injunctions of like and the laws of Moses, I believe that could be very easily like used as like a means to like genocide people that might be a little bit too different. The Bible has like such brutal like accounts, injunctions, commandments, statements that are very bold and explicit, and ironically it's even worse than like, it's even more gruesome than the Quran, because the laws of Moses, they literally like state that people that are like apostates, people that don't fit into those like scriptures, those rules in the rule books, they should all be stoned to death. Bro, that is like the case if you look at the Old Testament. And most Christians, they always like come to you, tell you that Big Sonic, so this book was made by some sort of demonic force. Small Sonic, it would appear to be so that the book that you're reading isn't from some benevolent deity, but from some malevolent force that's trying to take